Well, thank you all for being here. The panel today is going to be really, working with the co-host committee and talking about what would be interesting. It sounded like there was a lot of interest in just really understanding the history of the program and some of the statistics over the years and the origin, and then also seeing where the GSPA is today and what our vision for the future is. So that's really our goal today. We're going to start out talking about yesterday, and then we're going to move on to today and tomorrow. It's kind of a conventional order, but it just sort of seemed to make sense as we're putting this together. So that is the plan. And we'll introduce the panelists in just a quick second, but I want to at least lay the groundwork for yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So people often, that have been out of the program for 40, 50 years, when we talk about the GSPA, and even more recently, they associate that with the 15-month program for non-accounting majors. And that's really still a core part of what we do. But the GSPA today is actually more than that. So you can see the timeline here. In 1965, the GSPA was founded, and we're going to talk about that and how it came into being. And then still in 1992, that's when the MBA was added on as the MSA MBA, but still a focus on non-accounting backgrounds. In 1993, we added in the MS in taxation, and that's when we first started focusing on folks that do have an accounting background. And that's a lot of times with working professionals, and still really is. And then in 2004, we added an MS in accounting. And so the difference between the MSA MBA and the MS in accounting, MS in accounting is really a traditional is maybe the wrong word, but for accounting undergrads. So it's a graduate program for folks that have an accounting undergrad and want to get their master's in accounting and also get 150 hours in that way. So we now have 3 programs, and we'll talk more about that as time goes on. But as talking about yesterday's GSPA really is this unique 15-month program for non-accounting majors, and that's where we're going to start the conversation today. Okay. So I would love to start by having the panelists introduce themselves. If you wouldn't mind, I think one of the things that's always interesting is, where'd you go to undergrad, what's your major, and what did you do when you grew up? So let's, if you don't mind, let's go ahead and start with Jim.
Hi, working. I undergraduate was at Holy Cross in Worcester, and my degree was in French literature, which was very useful. I followed that up with 3.5 years of service to our federal government in the United States Army in the first draft lottery, and then came to Northeastern as a 25-year-old, a little bit older than most of my classmates, and got my master's in accounting, co-op at Coopers and Lybrand, and ended up going back to work for them when I graduated. Spent 4 years or so, which is, I guess, the original amount of time, in public accounting, left for a traditional accounting role in a transportation equipment leasing company in Boston called Extra Corporation. I spent a couple of years as starting in the internal audit department, 3 years as chief accounting officer, and then 3 years as chief information officer, and sort of a career change. And then I spent the next 30 so years doing consulting at the intersection of technology and finance, helping companies build large-scale financial systems in their businesses. Now I'm retired.
Great.
Hi, Hi.
Here we go.
Oh, great. Hi, I'm Amy Pitter. I have my undergraduate degree from Connecticut College in American History, also super useful. Then I went to law school, and my 3rd year of law school, I took a tax class and said, ooh, I'm in the wrong school. And, and then went to the GSPA class of 79, interned at Arthur Young, and then went to Big Price Waterhouse. Didn't last long in public accounting, not even the 4 years, and was in private for 10 or so, and then I was in government for about 25 years maybe, 15 actually working for the Department of Revenue, and 10 consulting, exactly what you do, putting in large-scale systems for states and federal governments who are putting in new tax systems. I eventually went up as Commissioner of Revenue for 4 years, which was super fun, and then got my current job as President and CEO of the Mass Society of CPAs.
Hi, I'm Joe Galemi. I got my undergraduate degree at Northeastern in biology, and I found that working in laboratories was kind of an isolating experience, as I always like to be around people and teams. And my dad explained to me what public accounting was, which of course I had no idea. He explained to me, it's what you want to do. And I said, why is that, Dad? And he said, because you're working with teams, and you get to explore all the different businesses as clients, thinking that didn't really equate to accounting as I knew it. So I took the plunge, and I graduated in 1978, and I did my internship with Pricewaterhouse at the time, before, which used to be our biggest rival, was Cooper's. We were always fighting them on proposals, and the idea of merging with them just seemed insane. But anyhow, after working for them for about 10 years, and a lot of the time was in their entrepreneurial services department. And they also sent me out on proposals to get new clients, so it kind of got me excited about joining one of these entrepreneurial service companies, and I did, and I left them to join an internet service provider in the early 90s, and it was before the internet became invented, kind of, unless you believe Al Gore invented it way before that, which some people say he did. There was so many people claiming they invented the internet, it was kind of ridiculous. But we had an amazing technology, 56K modems, which of course nobody cares about or would even consider today. But that was our big claim to fame, and we built the business up, and then in 1999 there came a situation where we were competing with DSL and cable, and we realized, okay, the party's over, and we sold the company. Fortunately, we sold the company for somebody who didn't really understand that. So we paid, they paid us a lot of money for that. And then I just continued in the venture business. From the next company I was involved in optical switching systems, and the most recent company, which I just finished up about 2 years ago, was a biotech company, which was selling topical products and things. And it just shows that, as a finance person, you can be all over the map, but once you get into these small companies, you're doing just about everything. A lot of the things that you have to do here at Northeastern now, which is raising money, which is the biggest thing, always trying to get money to fund these monstrously expensive development programs. Anyways, right now I'm just doing some consulting and trying to get to know my wife a little better and travel a little more, and it's been fun, and the GSPA is what got me started on all this.
Didn't hurt that you got free tuition.
Well, there were seven kids in our family, and every one of us knew we were going to Northeastern. 3 years old, and not to mention then graduate school.
Really?
And you're right. Yeah, it was.
So that was the conversation your father really had about why you wanted to go to.
Yeah, we didn't talk about who was going to pay the tuition or how that was going to happen. So that probably was in the back of his mind.
I'm Jim Milton Galemi. I used to say I was the oldest Galemi, but now I say I'm the firstborn. And, my undergrad was in biochem here at Northeastern, and I wanted to go to medical school, I thought, and medical schools didn't think they wanted me, so I had to do something else. To my father's consternation, I was hanging out at the house, unemployed, and he suggested that it might be a good idea if I looked at accounting. So I thought it was crazy, but anyway, I took some courses in the MBA program in the evenings, and got interested in accounting. And the thing that fascinated me the most was that I saw all these people in the MBA program that were I thought, much brighter than I was, engineer types, and they had the most difficult time with accounting and accounting concepts, and especially depreciation. That was something that it just seemed very difficult. Anyway, long story short, I graduated from GSPA in '74. I went to work for what was called Arthur Young at the time, And after a year as an auditor, I transitioned into the tax group and stayed there for about 10 or 11 years. I switched from the Boston office to Worcester. And at one point, near the end of my career with AY, Andre Young, they wanted me to move to another location for possibly becoming a partner. No guarantees, of course. So I had my choice of Beverly Hills, which I now regret not going there, or Birmingham, Alabama. But I declined both, and I decided that I was going to listen to my Italian grandfather's advice, who said to me, Jim, if you've got a trade, you've got it made. All right, so I had a trade, I had a skill set, now I had to put it to the test to see if I could really run my own firm, create my own firm. And with some selective coaching from Arthur Young, I got out of the starting blocks. And in, I think it was 2000, year 2000, I got interested in financial services, as you may know, some of you. The Federal Trade Commission allowed CPAs around that time, I think it was 99 or 89, to be compensated on the basis of what were called commissions, which were evil things as far as the AICPA was concerned. But anyway, we were liberated to get into financial services if we wanted to. And I wanted to a lot. I was always interested in investing. And so then I started adding the wealth management to the tax practice and created an entity called Catalyst Wealth Advisors. I have about 50 business cards with me. See me afterwards. And so I've been doing wealth management and still doing it. I wasn't smart like my brother Joe here. I didn't go to a high-tech company that spilled out millions of dollars when they sold out. In fact, I did the tax work for most of his companies. I never got any stock. I was too timid. What can I say? Anyway, that's my story.
Great, thank you guys. Did we get any microphone?
I don't know, did we? I guess not. Do I just need to?
Just push it up.
It's that.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah, but
Here, try this one instead. Yeah, somebody wants.
how about that?
There you go.
So I went to Connecticut College.
Well, I thought we would start out, this is going to go back and forth a little bit between facts and fun and commentary by our panelists. So these guys you can't see, but we've got a little walk through 50 years of fashion. And I really had great intentions of having graphs of like tie width and plaid frequency, but it just, we ran out of time to really get that. So we'll hope that that we can at least sort of see here. I noted that the tie width here is still pretty narrow, and we're going to see that kind of change going over time. Still a pretty clean-shaven look in 1969. We'll see how this
This guy with a bow tie in there.
Yeah.
He looks like somebody's father.
Yeah, how did you get in the front row?
Yeah, so
Yes.
is this Al here?
Al's right in the front row, middle, yep.
You got the facial hair? Nice.
Hasn't
It's
changed.
either 3 women.
One behind me, second row. That's just like both, woman behind every Sandy.
All right, so then we have 1974. So you see, this is our flag here, right?
Who's that guy with hair?
Lots of.
Yeah, it's the middle. Trying to stand tall.
Wow.
So is this you, Joe? This guy right in the middle? It's Jim.
No, two more over.
Two more over.
Two more.
Next to Nancy. The spotted tie next to
Oh, it's
Nancy
spotted
Adams.
tie, nice.
And the weird hair there.
All right, so we can see lots of flag, a lot more facial hair. I tried to count, we have about a third of the class at least has a mustache. So that may have been a peak, I think, with the facial hair too, as we found the industry. Moving into the 80s, so the photos here, we don't get to see the full outfit, so I took the liberty of taking a little screenshot there. But hair's getting bigger, and you can't see the plaid so much, but the facial hair's kind of gone away, not so much. Anybody here from the class of '89? I think there were some folks registered. 90? Okay. Okay. So then we go into 90s, 93. Class, there's definitely some 93ers here, right? We got a little group over here from 93. Again, we kind of have the ties are a little bit back more narrow. Still seeing some big hair in 93, so you got some in there.
Upper left.
Upper left, Marie. Yeah, that's a nice one. I had some high school pictures taken in that era as well, and my kids, when they see those pictures of me with the big perm hair, they just can't imagine why anyone ever would do that, but apparently we did. And then we get into the 21st century, so we're starting to see a little bit more familiar faces, and we've got some folks from 2009 here too. Yeah, so we've got kind of a group here from them as well. So, it just kind of shows you the longevity of this program over time, and I think the other thing that we talk about when we talk about the GSPA is just what connections people form. So connections within classmates, we have a lot of families come through. So here we have Megan Sue Gorman. Sue was, I have the dates here, graduated at '85. She was on our organizing committee, but she couldn't be here today. But then her daughter came through and graduated in 2019. So 2018, I think. Last year. And then we have Joe and Joanne. And then I don't have Jim up here because your picture, I wasn't sure who you were. Because it was a group one, whereas these were just the headshots. But family, you guys had 3 out of 7 kids, and granted, I think we've talked about, they didn't pay tuition and things like that, but obviously a lot of great career opportunities. And then we have Jim Ballway here and his son. So I just think, we'll see again when we look at today and tomorrow some more examples of siblings and people, spouses, marriages. Lots of marriages come out of the GSPA. And so it is really a program that binds people together and the cohort nature of it. Jim, would you talk for just a minute about the conversation you had with your son or how he decided to come here and what that was like?
Well, he had a similar academic background. He also went to Holy Cross and was an English major. And he came out of school, decided that he was going to go to work. And he went out looking for management training jobs to no success. Ended up with file clerk jobs, temp jobs, and he's getting pretty frustrated. And so he and I had a long talk, and I suggested he try this, that it gives him a springboard to pursue a variety of careers, but it gives you some technical skills and some job skills. And that's what he was running into all the time when he was out trying to interview for jobs. He didn't have any work experience except scooping ice cream, and didn't qualify. And so he finally agreed that he was getting nowhere and he was going to give it a try, and he did, and he's been very happy. He's spent the requisite 4 years at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and he left a couple of years ago and works for a small consulting firm.
And I think it speaks to the lasting nature of the program, that people are willing to recommend their siblings and their children and their other important people in their lives. It's a program that is there.
And my first wife was a graduate of the program and a classmate of yours.
Yeah, so we see that a lot. Okay, so I thought we would, since we have the honor of having some GSPA royalty here, like Alumni brothers, I thought we would ask them to tell us a little bit of, what their understanding of the origin of the program is. I think we've heard some people know more about that than others, but Jim, would you mind starting and telling us, what you know of the, how this program started and how your dad was involved?
Okay, well, he was very concerned that the accounting firms were not getting what he called the cream of the crop. That the cream was all going to law schools and medical schools, and he was hearing a lot about that from the firms at the time as well. That they were looking for more qualified folks than they were able to hire, and so he came up with this idea that the firms would give the school money because at the time anything that you did at Northeastern had to be cash flow positive or it wasn't going to happen. So between the tuition charges and the money that he got from the accounting firms, they started the program. 6 months of school, 3 months of internship in the winter, and then your final 6 months to graduate. And I can remember him saying many times how difficult it was sometimes to get the firms to pony up after a few years. And one particular story, I won't mention the name of the firm, the managing partner handed him an envelope, and it was a sealed envelope. And so he asked my father to open it up, and he did. And my father said nothing at all about the contents of the envelope, which was a check, but obviously it wasn't large enough for my father. And so he gave it back, and as the story goes, he ended up getting a larger check. So he had to do a lot of fundraising. He was very tight with the president of the university at the time, Asa Knowles, and in fact, I think he did the tax work for Asa. And so they were pretty tight. And as long as the program was willing to, was able to be cash flow positive, Asa gave it the blessing, and they got out of the box that way. The thing that I find amazing now is that apparently there's no visiting professorship program. That was a key thing to getting students interested in the program in the early years, because well, let's just say that if you could attract the #1 professor in a certain field from across the country to be a participant in the program, it might enhance the likelihood of students signing up. So he would go to what was then called the American Accounting Association, the accounting version of AAA, and he would corral people that he liked that he saw during presentations, and he would suggest that wouldn't it be a great thing to spend 6 weeks of summer in Boston, Cape Cod, etc. So he spent a lot of time recruiting professors for the visiting professorship program in order to enhance the quality of the program and its reputation. And I don't understand why that doesn't happen anymore. Julie and I talked a little bit about it, but apparently it's not necessary anymore because the school has done so well with it. And the other thing that we had at the time, as some of you may remember, is the scholarship program. And the scholarship program, my dad believed, had to be based totally on production. So the exams that we would take, there was a tremendous anxiety during for some people, well, for most of us actually, during the exams, because your scholarship money was totally dependent on your GPA. So if you made the GPA cutoff, you got your scholarship for next semester. If you didn't, well, you gotta go somewhere else for the money. So, and I understand this, is there a scholarship? There's no scholarship program now either, is that right?
We have merit scholarships, but they're typically awarded at the beginning of the program. You have to maintain a minimum GPA in order to keep it, so you can lose it for sure. But it's not that sort of competitive ranking, yeah.
Okay. All right, well, I've talked enough. I'll let my brother Joe say a few things.
Well, one thing I noticed.
He's working.
Okay. One thing I noticed later on in life, when I got involved with these entrepreneurial companies, where even though you're a chief financial officer, you're involved in the fundraising, the partnering, and the recruiting of employees. And I realized that my father had that complexity in his job too. I mean, he was going, running around the campuses trying to recruit students from different schools because he wanted to broaden the base. That was a way of increasing demand for the program, making awareness and demand. And the whole program, like Jim was saying, was built off a lack of supply. And just like any good startup or entrepreneurial idea is, okay, you got a gap in the economy or whatever you want, whatever your gap is. And here it was a lack of qualified applicants, because one thing, you can't last long in an accounting firm if you don't pass the CPA exam. You got to have a CPA license to continue on. And I think that when in the early days, as you pointed out earlier, when people started getting medals for the CPA exam, that was that was just an amazing thing, and that made the accounting firm very happy. When I started with Price Waterhouse, we used to go to these functions, and people would come up to me and they would grab me, shake my hand, and tell me how wonderful and great my father was. And these are things that I knew he was wonderful and great, but it was just surprising that so many, not surprising, but exhilarating that so many people thought the same thing. And his passion to drive the program and give them, the accounting firms, people that I noticed many people became partners. It was just a real win-win situation, if you will. And that, like I said, I knew my father was doing good work, but I had no idea how much he was appreciated. Of course, as a son, you see that and you go, wow, maybe I should throw my weight around a little more, take advantage of that.
Yeah, and Amy, I wanted to ask you, because when we spoke earlier, I asked who the director was when you went through it. Right away, you said Joe Galemi, and your eyes lit up in a way that really touched me. So I wonder if you could sort of speak to what Joe was alluding to there in terms of the way that he was thought of and how he helped you in your career.
Sure, so we idolized him. Is this one? Must be me. Hello? Must be something wrong. Biology. Hi. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, let's stop him.
You just passed it back.
So we idolized Joe. We looked up to him. We saw him as a role model and a mentor. There were 45 of us in the program then. And we really, each one of us felt that we had a relationship with him. And he was funny and irreverent, and I don't know, we loved him. And I can imagine what that must feel like as a son.
Oh,
Right. So the next slide is just campus memories. So I thought you might each, when in talking with you, the reason I've got Cape Cod up there and a picture of the visiting professors, as Jim mentioned, everyone, when I spoke with them and preparing for this, would tell stories about how the visiting professors, that was a big part of the program. They would come in the summer months. But the big draw was that they all had a house on Cape Cod, right? So,
Well, and some of them had very nice children.
Some of them had daughters that were about my age, so I really liked visiting professor.
Good. So, Jim, why don't you start? Give us a story. The Fortran card is up there for you. You were telling me a story a little bit about.
We had a course that was called, I think, Economics Management. It had some weird name like that. And it was a combination of statistics and computer programming. And we had Bob Parsons.
Oh,
Do you remember
yes.
Bob?
Oh, yeah, I have no person.
Okay. And he taught that course. And we actually had a program, I believe, in Fortran. Is that right? Yeah. Fortran, like on punch cards. That's what we did. It was like you had to, write a program that would add 1 and 1 and come up with 2 or something like that. It was highly complex stuff. But it turns out that he had continued to teach in that program. My son, who is the class of 2013, had Bob Parsons as well. So father and son had the same professor or teaching in the same program. That's pretty interesting.
So when I had him, the last day of class, he said to everybody, please don't forget me. If you see me in the future, reach out, shake my hand, and say, hello, I'm Amy Pitter. And from then on, everybody would reach out, shake his hand, and say, hello, I'm Amy Pitter.
But my Altovan story was, first of all, you did that situation where you would stand up, you would start asking you questions and wait for you to not answer the question, and then just sit down and go to the next person. And that was kind of interesting. But the one thing he said to our class, which shocked us all, he said, after a few years of being in public accounting, you guys are probably going to make $100,000 a year. So, no, that's impossible. And we were shocked by that statement, And he said, yeah, no, it's true, you will. And at the time, I think the starting salaries was $16,000. So the idea that we would end up making $100,000 a year, which of course now is,
Almost a starting
So
salary.
much, for anyone at West, technology bringing their name especially, but, no, that was, I'll always remember that, because we were so shocked when he said that. $100,000.
Alan Tobin was not only big for the program, but he was on the board of trustees of the university.
Yeah.
Very highly respected individual.
Yeah. No, we enjoyed it.
Good guy.
He was
He was
very,
a
and a
tough
good
teacher.
teacher.
He was tough teacher. Toughest one that we had in the program in my class, as I recall.
Maybe we can look him up and invite him to join us one of these years.
Please.
Oh, you definitely should.
Yeah.
One last thing about Alan was that my dad recruited Alan to teach the tax course, obviously. And my dad had Alan as a student in the undergrad accounting program. And in talking about Alan, my dad said, you know, that guy, he kept coming up after class asking about the footnotes. And so, you know, this is the way. So they developed this bond because he and Al were always talking about the footnotes of the, I think, the Prentice Hall tax thing, whatever. And I just want to say also, I want to thank Jim Ballway. Years ago, we had, after my dad died, we ran a golf tournament for about 15 years to raise money for the school, for the graduate school program. And Jim always brought at least 8 golfers with him. He always sponsored a hole or two. He was a tremendous supporter of the program. And thank you very much, Jim. And Alan Tobin, too, was a big supporter of our golf tournament.
I was a big supporter of your father.
Great. All right, so as promised, I've got some information, some statistics. I'll put the enrollment up here for just a minute, but then I'm going to overlay the GDP growth with it. So we hear oftentimes that enrollment in accounting programs is countercyclical. So as the economy goes up, accounting enrollments go down, and when the economy goes down, people are looking for security. They're looking for expertise, so then that's when the accounting enrollments go up. So what you'll see here, the red line is the GDP growth, and you do see that sort of opposite nature, right? When one goes up, the other goes down, and then they come back together. You'll see that our current, we've got kind of a really sad dip over here. And our current class, people ask, we're at 28. And that's, you know, lower than we'd like to be. And so one of our goals in having you all here today and reaching out to our alumni is to really engage and energize the base in terms of recruiting. And we'll talk about that a little bit in the today and tomorrow section. But we know that a lot of our people that come into our program are referrals, right? Family members, neighbors, friends. It's a great program. It's a great opportunity. It's a wonderful career in accounting. And so, you know, we certainly are expecting this number to go back up. We had some transitional things going on in addition to some economy things. So we're optimistic for the future of the program, but you do see the dip there that we are definitely looking to turn around. So also we've talked a lot about the firms. This is sort of an idea. You can see what years in 1965 when the program started. We had the Big 8. It was 1989 when we went down to 6. And Arthur Anderson went away somewhere in the middle here, and that leaves us where we are today, the Big 4. But we really talk about the Global 7 now as well. These, you know, the medium-sized firms that, you know, they're global in nature as well, and a lot of our students are going into these firms as well. Obviously, great opportunities there. And then over the years, we've had some partners, you know, some regional firms that have been a great presence with the program as well, and have had a lot of employees or graduates, alumni go to these firms as well. So that's the overview of the industry. And then this is GSPA specific. So this is not 100% of the data. So one of the things too is that we're really working on pulling our data together. Those on the co-host committee know that we don't have perfect data by any stretch of the imaginations in terms of contact information and where people went with their careers and things like that. So that's one of the things we're working and hoping to ask for support in, you know, telling us your story and helping us tell the story of the GSPA. But this is about 50% of the total students and the firms that they work at. So you can see PwC is huge. They've, you know, been a big supporter of the program, and a lot of folks have gone through there. But, you know, all the firms have pretty good representation there. Okay, so this slide is meant, we did some of this in the introduction, but really to talk about, as we talk with prospective students about this program, a big part of my job is helping them understand what kind of career opportunities exist in the accounting profession. So I think it's really interesting to hear all the different paths. I was talking with a student this morning who said, you know, you can start in accounting, if you get that CPA, you can go into just about any other area of business, but if you start in other areas, you can't come back to accounting. And I think it is really true because we do see our graduates go on and do so many different things. And then, you know, this is yesterday. Is it Jim, you had the story about the 26-column spreadsheet?
We have 21 column spreadsheet, how we used to audit mutual funds by reposting every single transaction that they did throughout their entire year, and then footing and cross-footing and recalculating gain and loss. Big 21 column spreadsheets, numbers everywhere, erasures everywhere, and that's how we audited mutual funds.
Yeah.
Recreated the balance sheet 100%.
Yeah. That's just nuts.
Did you get a lot of holes in the paper?
You did. If you didn't run an adding machine, well, you were in trouble. But you would get, they were summary sheets that would have the totals from all the individual sheets behind it. There would be like 3 summary sheets. And it would be, every block would be filled in. And if you weren't good and you erased a lot, you'd erase holes in the paper. And you'd have to copy the whole damn summary spread thing over to a new one. And it would cost you, like, 10 hours of your day.
Those were tough days.
Tough days.
Yeah. So yeah, we're all happy, I think, that we're not doing 21 column spreadsheets with pencils anymore. But the other slide here I wanted to point out, this is one of our graduates that just graduated in 2019, and this is our new transit campaign. So not just our program, but others within the graduate business school. And you know, I think one of the things that struck me as I've been researching this is how similar, you know, the program is, the 15 months, the internship. It's really remarkable how this was created 50 plus years ago, and it's really largely intact today. And it leads to so many different career options. So I guess this will wrap up the yesterday portion here with this final kind of question to each of you. But I'd love to hear maybe one thing. So what would you tell to inspire someone who's considering a career in accounting? You know, why they should jump in? And Amy, do you want to start? You're probably good at this question, right? You talked to a lot of people about this.
We do, and you know, the salary stuff never hurts. But really, we spend so much of our time kind of redefining the brand for young people, and we start in middle school. You know, we start with guidance counselors who, when they think who would make a good accountant, they think, well, let's look for the quiet, introverted kid who's good with numbers. And so we have to start by saying that is exactly wrong. And that's really the message that we tell the middle school students, the high school students, and the college students is what a dynamic profession it is, and how, you know, really the tension right now is, are kids going to go into technology and use that for finance, or are they going to go into accounting and also become knowledgeable about technology? So our pitch is that the business people, the CPAs, are going to be the owners of this, and the pure technologists are really going to be the people who will help the CPAs to be the advisors, to be the decision makers. So that's kind of, it's like, everybody wants to be in technology, STEM is huge, and our pitch is really, but a level above STEM are the people who use the STEM folks to achieve the business goals and to really be the partner of the CEO.
Yeah, I would echo that. And, you know, the thing that, I mean, my father could talk anybody into anything if he wanted to, but the one thing that got me interested in saying, what, really? Was when he said that if you go into public accounting, first of all, you're not choosing a specific company because you're gonna have exposure to all these different companies, and eventually you'll either become a partner or you'll leave to join a company, and you get to experience a technology company, a single company, where then you can move on to a different one. Whereas if you took a job directly with a technology company, you just have that one company experience. And on top of that, the proposal process, which was very attractive to me, where you're going out there competing against the other firms to get clients. I mean, that's like being a salesman. And you can't be an introverted person to be involved in those proposals, because it was pretty rough stuff. I mean, of course, our biggest competitor was Cooper's, and we solved that by merging with them. They had us, the way they did it was they made more partners. Price Waterhouse had less partners, and they said, well, that's because, who knows what the reason was, but we would show up at a proposal with maybe 1 or 2 partners. Cooper's would show up with like 7 or 8 partners, and they would just overwhelm the client. Well, you only brought 2 partners, why don't you care about this? So it was a very competitive process. But that is not the way I would have ever thought about accounting. And I think if that can be translated into that fashion, you could probably attract a wider strata of, and you're probably doing that anyways. I should be telling you that. You're probably
We'll take all the guys.
I would just repeat what Vincenzo Galemi said to me. If you've got a trade, you've got it made.
My name is Yusra, and I just graduated from Rutgers University this past May, and then I joined the program a week after commencement. So I'm still in the process of getting through the program, but yeah.
Hang in there, it's worth it.
Hi everyone, my name is Victoria. I graduated from Boston College with a very useful major in theater arts and communication. Makes me very employable. Finished my undergrad in 2013 and worked in nonprofit fundraising and event planning for a number of years. And then made a transition into the GSPA, haven't looked back since. Graduated just about a year ago, and I've been with Ernst & Young in their commercial assurance practice here in Boston since then.
Hi everyone, my name is Tim Rupert. I'm not part of the class of 2020, which you might be thinking. Instead, I'm on the faculty for the program. And it was horrifying hearing you talk about prior professors. Especially because I am the tax professor now. We'll see what they say as we go through. But I joined Northeastern in 1992 and started teaching in the GSPA program in 1993. And so everyone from 1993, well, it would have been the class of 94 through today, has had me for tax. That's the one consistency. So I bring that perspective to it. To me, I've gotten a lot out of teaching in the program, not the least of which is all this gray hair.
But you still have the hair.
I still have it. It's just correct.
One quick thing, I got a degree in IT.
Good combination.
Okay, thank you guys. So here, I promised more connections. These are a little more current connections, but we've got a couple of marriages here. And here, both of these guys, this is Romina. Elizabeth, I need your help, or Tim, you probably know who all these folks are.
Yeah, most of them. So that's Romina and Sean.
Yep.
They were in class together and ended up getting married.
Yep.
And then the connection is, I just found this out today, I didn't know this, that Julian in our current class is a relative of Romina's.
Yep.
Um,
And this is Allison and Tom Leonard. Allison graduated in 2012 and Tom in 2018. We've got Kirby and Carl Sundquist, right? So Kirby was 16 and Carl just graduated just now, right? 19, yeah, right. And remind me, Elizabeth, who these folks are, or Tim, do you know?
Liz Labonte and Tim, and
Yeah.
and Bill Kearney.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they were class of 2010 maybe? And her big brother was maybe 2006.
2 years before, yeah.
So, and this is just a sampling, right? We could fill an entire slideshow of people with, the families that have come through. Tim, you talked, when we were talking about this, a little bit about how, the connections within the program are really unique and special in teaching.
Yeah, I guess, coming to Northeastern, I didn't know a lot about this program until I started teaching it, and it was sort of fascinating to see the connection that people make with each other. That's really unusual, I think, compared to a lot of other programs throughout the country. And it's been amazing to me that the degree of connection that classes keep, and it varies a little bit from class to class. But I know, for example, there's one class that has their own reunions that they've been organizing. I think now they're 15 years out. And I get invited to those every once in a while. Oh, we're having a reunion again. Come on, join us. So it's just neat to see that connection. And I know that a lot of you have kept some of those same connections up as well.
Okay, so the next thing we wanted to talk about is really the legacy, the connections between yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and the different ways that folks can be involved. Our Alumni Ambassador Program is something that we're really working to build up, and that's a recruiting process, going out to undergrads and speaking about careers in accounting, being willing to take a phone call from somebody who went to Bowdoin, the school that you went to, or whatever school it happens to be, or somebody who's a French major and you were a French major, and you can sort of talk about that path and how it was a crazy transition, but it made sense and it's worked for you. So alumni ambassadors are something, and we've got some information about that in various places, both in your folders, and would love to talk with you about that if you want to contact myself or any of our team. And then, scholarships. I think that's obviously philanthropy is another way that people can give back. And Jim here has been gracious enough to sort of talk about why, he has been generous in giving a scholarship, and, just kind of talking about how you got started doing that and why that's important to you and what you get out of it. So Jim, if you wouldn't mind.
I have been contributing to our teaching for a number of years, not at a scholarship level, but one of the development officers at one point in time twisted my arm and convinced me that for a few extra dollars you could have a scholarship named for you, and you could set the criteria for the scholarship. So I said, oh, sounds interesting. Well, that was 10 years ago, and we went and we did it, and I've had this will be my 10th scholarship this coming year, and I have one of them here. Victoria was my scholarship recipient last year, and I've always had the opportunity to have lunch every time that they award one of my scholarships with a person who benefited from it, and it makes it personal. So it worked out great.
And Jim, you do yours specifically targeted toward students coming into the program, ideally from Holy Cross.
So Holy Cross, from my undergraduate institution, it's a way of sort of giving back to both of my educational institutions, because the students from my undergraduate institution get the benefit from the scholarship of my graduate institution.
Yeah, and then when you get to talk with them, you get double connection as well.
Double connections. Yeah. Except this was the first time that we had a Boston College student. Which is like, back in the day, Holy Cross and Boston College were arch rivals. They would never speak to each other, Holy Cross.
I like to think we're building bonds of friendship.
So Victoria, maybe you can speak a little bit about receiving the scholarship, but then also I know you help us out in other ways, and so maybe you could talk about what motivates you to give back.
Of course. So I was fortunate enough to be the recipient of Jim's scholarship when I came into the program. And for me, as someone who was giving up a full-time career and a career path to take negative income and pay some tuition, the generosity that Jim showed and making that transition a lot easier and making the decision easier for me was a big piece of why my now fiance and I decided this is something we can take on. It's worth going into this program and making this change. So I'd like to think I've done his scholarship good service when I was a student here, but coming out of the program, it was important to try and give back as well. While I'm not in a position, and maybe someday we'll be able to help contribute in a more financially significant way, I've been fortunate enough to be involved a lot on the recruiting side for Ernst & Young and with the firms, and just trying to give back my time, because that's what I have right now as a resource for the GSPA. So, helping on the alumni committee for this event, and helping with recruiting both for students coming into the GSPA and then those who might be interested in working from EY has been a really wonderful opportunity to get to know the students coming down the line, but also try and pay back those, build those connections forward as well.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so as I mentioned, if you're interested in helping with recruiting or talking to students or anything like that, look us up, find myself or some of my team, and we'd love to get you involved with that.
It's been fun, I promise.
Yeah. So this is what the GSPA looks like today. We're within the DeMora McKim School of Business. We are still the Graduate School of Professional Accounting, but we now have the 3 programs. So over here, the MSA Accounting plus MBA, that's the traditional non-accounting track. And then I mentioned we have the others. So Tim, as a person who teaches in all 3, I wonder if you could sort of speak to this and sort of the background as to why we have the 3 programs.
Yeah, partly this growth of the 3 programs is one of the reasons that I was hired at Northeastern. That year that I was hired in the fall of 1992 was the same year that we started the MST program. And I think my understanding from talking with the senior faculty at that time was that they believed that we were doing a great job with the GSPA program and making those connections with the profession, but there were opportunities in additional education for people that were interested in getting a tax degree, and then later when the 150 hours requirement went in for the CPA exam to better fulfill that. And because things went so well with the Graduate School of Professional Accounting under the leadership over the years, they figured that was the place to put these new degrees rather than just putting them into the graduate school. So that's really what led to this format that we have now. At the start, it's interesting, you'll see there that there are a number of different faculty involved with it. At the start, there was one faculty that was really overseeing all of those from the faculty side. It was Paul Janelle, who followed some of the work that Joe Galemi did and others did. He did that for quite some time. I took over for him as he was getting further on in his career and went across all 3 programs because I was teaching in all 3. But I'll tell you, it was exhausting, and I don't know how he was able to do that and the predecessors with all the different programs. And so now we split it up with the 3 different ones, and they both all have a slightly different focus, but all meant to give people, a real leg up in the start of their career and help them transition careers if they're doing that. So it's been working out pretty well. The most recent change that we have is adding the online portion of our education through the Masters of Tax program that's done online, since that one's done by mostly people that are already working. And so that's been a good success for us.
Great. And for anyone from the 70s, Larry Ginsberg here, he graduated from the GSPA in 1977. He's back here with us. He went on to public accounting, became a partner, did a lot of different things, but he's back now in faculty as well. So we've got a lot of boomerangs, I guess, back to the GSPA. So just briefly, this is myself and our team, Elizabeth Jones. Many of you that graduated in the last 10 or 12 years know Elizabeth. And then Cassie is our recruiting specialist. She manages our outreach to campus programs. The rest of us are involved with that as well. And then Stephanie is our program coordinator, so she does kind of everything. She was very involved in putting this together. And she's also really our main contact for alumni, so expect to really hear from any of us. We work very closely together, as you might imagine, kind of as the academic cycle goes around the clock. We're all hands on deck in different areas. So. Back to some statistics. I went through the archives, and this is about 55% of all GSPA graduates and the undergrad that they came to us from. So you can see Holy Cross has a pretty impressive lead there. We have a long history coming from there. But I think it's also really indicative of, it shows the original vision. When we talked about the origin of the GSPA and learned about that, the idea is that you can get really great students from these liberal arts schools that don't have undergrad accounting majors, and you can see a long tradition there. And these are the schools that we're still recruiting at today. So if you went to one of these or another one that you don't see here, we'd love to have your help connecting with students there.
At Yale.
At Yale? Okay. Well, so again, this is sort of statistics, this is math, but we may have had some Yales in there, but we'll add it on there, sounds good. And then majors. You know, I knew we had a lot of econ majors, I didn't know that it was as high as 30%. Again, this is not a complete data set, this is only about 42% of the total graduates that we have data for. But lots of econ majors. But we know they come from every field, right? We've got a lot of language, French majors, Japanese majors. But we also today see things like Yusra mentioned, she has her degree in IT. And I think it's really interesting that, you know, one of the hallmarks of the traditional MS Accounting MBA or GSPA is that people do come from all different backgrounds. So I'd love to hear Victoria, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about how you feel like your undergrad major gives you an interesting perspective that's different. And then Yusra, I'll ask you the same question, even though you don't necessarily know yet.
So how does theater work for accounting? Well, I can tell you it gave me a lot of good practice at talking to people. You know, that's something that the previous panel was discussing is learning how to work with clients, build relationships, build connections with someone, keep a conversation going. I credit a lot of my undergraduate career in helping train me for that. Working in a communications background gave me writing skills, working in theater gave me the people skills. And the GSPA then brought it all home by honing the technical skills I needed to make that transition. So I think for me, I would not change a single thing about what I did with undergrad decision because Northeastern had the program I needed to finish that transition to public accounting.
So with an IT degree, I know that I get to have any job experience because I went right from undergrad into this program. But what I learned as an IT major was something that is going to be relevant to me no matter what field I go into. And because I picked accounting, I see it in my classes how relevant IT is and how much accounting, every time I meet someone from another firm, they talk about how they're trying to get IT into the system and change the way that things are working so that they can get the processes more computerized. So I feel like I came in with a skill set that is definitely going to just help me even more with accounting.
Great. All right, thank you. Tim, what do you see in terms of people? Do you find that the folks coming from different backgrounds have a different perspective than, say, some of the other classes that you teach?
Yeah, it is one of the reasons that I like teaching in this program. I told you that I've been teaching for quite a while, and that's my choice. Because I come from a more traditional accounting background. I have an undergraduate degree in accounting, I went and got a master's degree in tax, and then ended up getting my doctorate in accounting. But it was all accounting, and I found that in those classes, oftentimes we all sort of think alike if you come from that same background. Teaching a tax class, what's been a lot of fun is, you know, going into that class and talking about some of the tax policy issues. And you know, you have an economics major, you have women's studies major, if you have an IT major, they come with really different thoughts about what our tax system should look like, you know, what we should be doing in our tax system. So that's been a lot of fun and offered a different perspective on teaching tax that I've had in teaching our traditional undergraduates in accounting.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to tomorrow. We gotta keep this thing going to wrap up by the right time. So as we think about tomorrow, this is really yesterday, today, and tomorrow, but you know, the class of 66, all the white males, the class of 2020, a very different look. You can see here we were able to graph the gender ratios over time. You can see a pretty broad gap there between. Do I have the colors mixed up? Isn't that funny? Well, that's all right. We're breaking the molds, right? The boys are pink and the girls are blue. Breaking the stereotypes. But you can see, you know, around the time of the 70s, that's when we started to see it come together. And over the years, it's kind of gone back and forth. But it certainly has changed as far as gender goes, and it certainly has changed as far as, you know, ethnic diversity goes. So I would love to hear, Amy, your perspective as someone who has come, you know, from the time where the gap was much bigger and what that was like and how you've seen the profession change.
Sure. So let me start by saying a not very flattering story that I remember from GSPA, and this was a third of my class were women, so we were 13 women and 30 men. I think that's a third, right? Bunch of CBAs. So we were taking a business class, and the case study was on Southwest Airlines. And on the cover page, there was the Southwest Airlines stewardess in her hot pants and go-go boots. And our teacher said, well, she'll never have to be an accountant. Well, we were not happy, but those were the times, and those times are over. You know, nobody would even dream of saying something like that today. But it's not an all good news story. I mean, thinking about diversity, you know, gender diversity, ethnic diversity in the field, we're struggling. The good news is everybody recognizes it. The managing partners of firms of all sizes, and have become committed to doing something about it. But it is hard. If you look, women have been in parity with men in school and in new hires for decades. But if you look at the partner level right now, it's still only 20% women. And that hasn't changed in 10 years. It's been exactly flat, despite everybody's hard work and good intentions. I think things have moved now to really sort of practical solutions. You hear about resumes, even for promotions, with the names taken off. So that, you know, you can, some of the unconscious bias folks have, everything you can do to try to eliminate that unconscious bias. PwC started CEO Action for Diversity about 2 years ago. There are now 700 signers of it, including many of the global, all of the global firms, many of the national firms. The Mass Society signed it about 3-4 months ago now, and we've encouraged about a dozen local firms, you know, the sort of larger local and regional firms to sign. And what that involves is some really practical things like training in unconscious bias, training and having difficult conversations at work. And I think it's those really, first, you have to care, and you have to believe the business case that you're better with diversity. Then you have to figure out how you get there. So I think the CEO action, the trainings, the focus on unconscious bias and difficult conversations, maybe I'm a hopeless optimist, but I think we're going to start to see some real results from that.
And Yusra, you and I were talking as we were preparing for this panel about, you know, your thoughts in entering the profession and sort of what your thoughts coming into it were. Would you mind sharing some of what we talked about?
Yeah. So going into the program, I knew that I liked accounting because I had taken a class in high school. And I was just like, no, this is what I want to pursue. So I looked into master's programs, but even like days before my interviews for the program, I was concerned thinking about, I'm going into this program as a female and as someone with parents who are from India, and I'm such a minority into this, and am I going to succeed? And you hear all the time about how it's so easy for a white male to make it, you know, so big in these sort of situations, and they're the more successful ones, and women are usually not given those opportunities. But at the same time, I told myself that I can still do it, because if I'm here and I get into the school and I get this degree, then I deserve the job and I deserve to move up. So I kind of just told myself, no, you know, I can't let that get in the way. And if I continue to do that, then it still discourages women to go in, because, you know, you need to push yourself to get into it. So, yeah.
And you said that so far in your firm visits, you're not working in the firm yet, you're looking for an internship, but how have you found the reception to be?
Yeah, so coming into going to the firm visits, it's been nothing that I was expecting, so that's been amazing. Everyone's so welcoming, so friendly, no one judges you, and you know, being a Muslim, you know, wearing a headscarf every day, everywhere I go, I feel like it's even more visible to think that, okay, people are gonna treat me differently, but I have not felt that way once, which is an amazing feeling to know that this is what I'm gonna spend the rest of my life doing.
Great, thank you. And I think, you know, I would echo, you know, in working with the advisory council, they are certainly asking us to help recruit diverse candidates, and I know the Mass Society is busy doing that as well. The GSPA draws people from all different backgrounds. The program, the traditional program that we're talking about here. And so I think it's a role that we can play. We're definitely interested in partnering with folks. We're going to be doing an information session here at the John D. O'Brien African American Center this fall. So we'd love to have your support and ideas in terms of getting the word out and continuing to spread the word about the opportunities that accounting profession has. Okay, so next slide is I had fun putting this together. It's certainly not a complete list. But some of the developments that I think have impacted the business world and the accounting profession in terms of how we communicate and how we do our work. Certainly a lot of changes since the GSPA has started. And I'd love to kind of get some perspective. Jim, I guess I stole your thunder. I was going to ask you to tell your 21-column spreadsheet cross-cutting by hand here, but we'll just recall that, bring it in by, what do the lawyers say? We're going to incorporate that by reference or something like that. So, we know that it hasn't always been this way. Victoria, I'm curious, as someone who's out in the profession now, how has it been in your first year? I mean, can you imagine a 21-column spreadsheet?
No. It's funny because, going through the program and meeting people, I heard lots of stories about, all right, your first year you audit cash, and I'm on commercial clients, so, you do cash and you do goodwill and assets and the easy stuff, right? Well, I feel like as technology changes, the nature of a job for a first-year staff has been changing. I never touched anything on the top half of the balance sheet my first year, because the way data analytics is evolving and the way that we're working more efficiently in our job using all these new technology tools means that we're not spending staff one time on the easy stuff anymore, because we can get computers to do that for us faster. So I spent my first year working on implementation of ASC 842. I got to jump right in on this new leasing standard from the get-go. And that, I think, opened my eyes to the opportunities of really embracing the technology changes, because that's going to open up my time to spend on more interesting, more technical areas. And that as technology changes, we're starting to work smarter, we're starting to work more efficiently, and it means that, as our new staff ones and our new students are coming up through the ranks, the message I'm sharing is, you may end up in a smaller client where you're doing, the easy stuff, and it's a good training tool, but don't expect to get an easy project in your first day. Expect to be challenged from the very beginning and really embrace the opportunities the firms are going to give you to build your technology skills. Learn these tools, learn them well, because they're going to change the way that we're doing business already.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I had asked another Dan over here. I'm going to come over here and share. Dan is an alum from Deloitte, and he was a late respondent about the panel. But you work with the technology process and really driving change through the firm. Is that right? That's correct. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the process that the firms use to drive the change.
Sure, absolutely. So, Dean Clark, class of 2009. Deloitte Audit Senior Manager. With regards to echoing the process here, I think all companies involved here are realizing technology. We're in the world of data information and metadata. So where's this data coming from? How are we going about to capture it, use it, analyze it? And a lot of what we're thinking about now is more diving into what are the trends, what are the things that we're looking to see, and are there other areas or materials that are coming about from looking at this data set that can inform us to give, in the eyes of an advisory perspective, particular business value adds. This is kind of, I think, where we're starting to see a lot of where, automation is certainly a big thing, but the value add of what do we currently have and how do we get it is the emphasis, I think, right now as we're working on implementation of various technologies.
All right, other panelists have ideas about technology and how it's changed. Yusra, maybe tell us a little bit about where, how you see technology.
Okay, yeah,
Come from your life.
growing up, I've always had a computer around.
Do you mind telling us what year you were born?
Yes, I was born in 1997. So.
Put it in perspective.
I've always had a computer around. I wasn't always allowed to use it, but growing up, I still played with toys. I wasn't stuck behind a phone trying to be quiet or something. But I've seen the days where I would have to beg my dad to use the internet for like an hour to play a game, or just I want to be on the computer. I want to learn how to use it. And ever since I was in kindergarten, we would have to go to a tech lab and learn how to use the computer in school, and that was a requirement. Even in 6th grade, I remember taking a class that was a graduation requirement on how to use Microsoft Word. And I look at those things now and I'm like, these are so basic. I don't know why we had to learn these things, but that's just because it was such a new concept that I just grew into it as it was growing. So technology has always just grown with me, and I would say my generation, because it was being introduced and put into our hands, and then we played around with it, and we gave feedback, and it's developed with us around. So when you were describing the 21 column, I haven't done it.
We didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
And Excel hadn't been invented.
Exactly, yeah, Excel is such a huge thing, and I can't imagine having to do all that over again, where you don't have, you're manually putting those things in. So technology has been such a huge help.
But sometimes, in defense of the 21 column spreadsheet, sometimes doing things the hard way and understanding how they're done, rather than the computer just does it for you and gives you an answer, gives you a better understanding of the process and what you do sometimes.
Great.
Not that I'm going to choose to do that.
We'll buy you a pad. So from my perspective, technology is basically revolutionizing the profession in so many ways. But to start with, building on what Victoria was saying, she's at EY, and she's describing a first-year experience that's going to be radically different than a first-year experience at a medium-sized firm where they don't have bots doing the accounts receivable confirmations or whatever. So one thing that we're seeing happen is this real sort of bifurcation in the industry between the larger firms and the more medium-sized and small firms. And there's, I think, a question that the profession has to address is how are the small firms going to survive? And also, Victoria, I'm just going to keep coming back because you were so good. The other thing Victoria was talking about is how there's no easy work anymore if you're at a large firm. So what does that mean for your college curriculum, right? Colleges are needing to graduate kids who already can act like second, third, and even fourth year professionals. So instead of getting their feet wet slowly by doing cash and receivables and whatever, they're needing to use higher level judgment, critical thinking, creativity, and all of this things. So what does that mean for the college curriculum? They really need to start to think differently about the skills that they need to graduate their students with. And are folks familiar with CPA evolution? So CPA evolution is something that the AICPA and NASPA is working on now to kind of try to address this. What they're saying is we need to teach a lot different skills in colleges and universities to aspiring accountants. We need to teach a lot more technology. We need to really go back to GSPA. People need to have taken French and theater and history to develop those critical thinking skills. They're going to become so much more important so much younger. And when you say that to faculty members, they say, oh, fine, what time Sunday morning would you like me to teach that? Because I'm already teaching quite a bit. So what CPA evolution is saying, look, we need to recognize that you need to know a certain amount of accounting to call yourself a CPA, but maybe not everything you needed to know 20 years ago. You need fewer rules, maybe, because you can always Google the rules. And what we really need is more technology and more critical thinking. So the move is to think about changing the exam to be maybe more scenario-based, maybe certain things won't be on the exam, maybe fund accounting won't be on the exam at all. And which I
I have yet to hear anybody say, no, you need to put budget accounting in. But to recognize, you know, how much technology is just revolutionizing the profession. I could go on for an hour, but.
Great, so that's a great transition into this, a little plug for what's coming up next, which is our Dean, Razi Jambadi, is going to be speaking about really what the future of DeMoore McKim, the business school which we are a part of, and how, you know, the vision that we are really combining those critical thinking skills with the data and technology. So that will be coming up shortly. And it's really the focus and the vision for not only DeMoore McKim, but for the GSPA as well. And we're constantly working with the firms and with our faculty to revise and evaluate the curriculum to meet the needs of today and tomorrow. So we are out of time, and I know it would be great to talk further. I just wanted to put in one more sort of plug for staying involved. We'd love to, you know, have your help, and I guess I covered this enough earlier. You can find us on social media. You've got some of this information in your folders as well. We have some really, the blog, you'll hear about day-to-day stories and things like that. We'd love to have you help us reimagine accounting and share what makes it a great profession. And that's what we have for today. So thank you very much to all of the panelists.